Alabama Public Television Studios in Montgomery, I'm Todd Stacy. Welcome to Capitol Journal. The latest jobs report is out today, and it shows Alabama's unemployment rate went up slightly to 2.3% for October. It was 2.2% in September, still at historic lows. However, the state's workforce participation rate remains unchanged at 57%. That's the number the state is now concentrating on because it shows how many able-bodied Alabamians are either working or looking for work. Alabama's rate is among the lowest in the nation. Slightly better news is that the state's workforce participation rate for prime age workers, those between 25 and 54 years old, is 78%. The Opioid Settlement Oversight Committee met this week to hear presentations from several different entities vying for grants to help combat the opioid epidemic. Alabama Attorney General Steve Marshall negotiated a $270 million settlement from opioid manufacturers who have been accused of helping cause the country's opioid crisis. These dollars can be used for a variety of causes, from preventing addiction to drug and mental health treatment to broader public awareness about the dangers of opioid abuse. State Health Officer Dr. Scott Harris said he hopes plenty of resources will go toward effective treatment options.
I was really impressed by all of them, actually. There's so much passion, there's so much caring and empathy for people who are struggling with addiction, and you heard all of that today. I would say we all come at it, from our own positions, from our own experiences. With my work on the Opioid Council, we have really tried to emphasize getting resources to people who need treatment. I mean, that's a really big part of what we see as important. We're going to have, a large sum of funding available, but it's not going to last forever, of course. It's certainly not even that large compared to the scope of the problem, even though it's a lot of funding. And so we really hope that we can use this opportunity to reach those people who are most in need, those people who are really struggling.
There's growing concern about avian flu in Alabama. There have been 2 recent outbreaks of a highly contagious virus among flocks in Chilton and Marshall counties. Experts at the Alabama Department of Agriculture are even considering requesting help from the National Guard. State veterinarian Tony Frazier spoke this week at the State Board of Agriculture and Industries. He said the bird flu does not pose a risk to humans, but is deadly and highly contagious to breeds of birds, including chickens, pheasants, quail, and ducks. Containing outbreaks is complicated and expensive, which is why officials are considering asking Governor Kay Ivey to call upon the National Guard to help. Poultry is Alabama's second largest industry. An Alabama death row inmate was executed this week. 49-year-old Casey McWhorter was put to death by lethal injection Thursday night at Holman Correctional Facility in Atmore. He was convicted of the killing of Edward Lee Williams, Jr., back in 1993 and has spent 30 years on death row. The victim's family said it was unfortunate they had to wait so long for justice, but that, quote, "it's been served." In his final words, McWhorter told the victim's family that he was sorry and, quote, "I hope you find peace." During the spring legislative session, the Alabama legislature passed a bill to cut the state sales tax on groceries by 1 cent, with plans for further reductions in the coming years. That 1 cent reduction went into effect in October, and a study commission met this week to see what the effects have been on state budgets. There was concern that the tax cut would adversely impact the Education Trust Fund, where those dollars flow. But state budget experts now say the impact has been less costly than expected.
I say it quite a bit. In the last couple of years, from 21 to 22, we're a complete sugar high in terms of revenues for the Education Trust Fund. Those were absolutely way out of line with normal growth patterns. In fact, I'll show in just a second. It's so far out of line that it's pretty easy to see the anomaly there. Lots of federal money, lots of people not being able to get out and shop like they normally do, lots of inflation, lots of reasons why there was a huge increase in revenues over 21 and 22 and actually into 23, but 23 was flat. That's important to know. What that means is essentially is that we had no growth over 22. But at that level, $10.43 billion, we're still far above what's needed to support the budget that's been enacted for '24.
We heard today from the fiscal office, and they detailed the numbers that they've been looking at. Obviously, we'll know much more in the future because we only have data from, this started September 1, so we have September and October data that's come in. So we'll know more as we move forward. Heard from Alabama Rise as well as the grocers about the impact locally that they're seeing with folks back at their respective homes. So. All in all, I think we're positive in the fact that grocery tax is now % lower and headed toward another % reduction as soon as the numbers are there in the budget.
Advocates met at the Capitol this week for an event to raise awareness about ALS and raise funds for research and support. The Carrie and Gary Challenge to Defeat ALS features former University of Alabama running back Carrie Good and former Auburn basketball player Gary Godfrey, both of whom now suffer from ALS. They are teaming up this Iron Bowl season to challenge fans to donate to the cause of finding a cure for ALS and supporting ALS patients and families. Governor Kay Ivey was also at the event, as was Kelly Butler, our former state finance director who stepped down last year after being diagnosed with the disease.
We actually prayed and wondered what was our purpose in life? What were we supposed to be doing with this? Because, of course, it was a knock in the head. What were we supposed to be doing with this? And so we prayed and wondered, what did God want us to do with this? And so this is what came of it, advocacy to spread the word, to get it out. When he was running across that field for, of course, the University of Alabama, Roll Tide. That was just a stepping stone to his life. This is the purpose. It's a purpose-driven life for both of these gentlemen. Because I never would have thought I would have been up here saying "War Damn Eagle," but it's more. It's bigger than that, and that's what we are here to do. So it is our purpose in life, and so that's what God has directed us to do, and so that's what we are doing.
The year's busiest travel season is upon us, as many families prepare to hit the road over the Thanksgiving holidays. As Randy Scott reports, travelers may have an extra reason to celebrate this year.
You can see the start of traffic building up for the big day. No, not Christmas, but travelers are getting a gift for Thanksgiving: lower gas prices.
For the first time in quite a while, our state average is below $3 a gallon. We hit $2.99 per gallon this week for our state average, and so that's a very welcome sight for everybody, for the rest of the year, most likely.
Clay Ingram, Public Relations for AAA Alabama, says it's been since early spring gas prices have been this low.
When we kind of get into the fall and we get those vacations behind us, school starts back, our demand starts to sort of trickle downward as the weather cools off a little bit, and so we typically see our gas prices follow suit and trickle down a little bit as well throughout the fall and into the winter.
He adds there are other reasons for the low prices.
Crude oil is a globally traded commodity, just like rice and wheat and gold and silver, and so we have to pay that global market price here in the U.S. just like everybody else in the world. And so it's a global situation, not a U.S. situation.
Concerns for foreign conflicts aren't as large as before, says Ingram.
This year, when we had the situation in Israel, that they are not a big crude oil producing country, so we didn't have the impact that we had last year because of that situation.
AAA says Alabama is one of the top 5 states on average with low gas prices, but it helps to stay alert.
With us having our state average at $2.99, we're going to see a wide variety of prices. There are going to be some stations at $2.85 a gallon, some at $3.19 a gallon. So if you're not careful, you can pay 40 cents a gallon or more than you need to be paying for gas. So you need to watch those prices. Be sure to price shop every single tank full.
Ingram says proper maintenance of your vehicle will help, but there are also groups monitoring prices for consumers.
We're always watching the gas price situation on a daily basis from every possible aspect. You know, our main focus is just the general consumer, the motorists that are out there and what they're paying. But, you know, a lot of businesses out there have fuel-related costs as well, whether it's diesel or gasoline, delivering products to warehouses, to retail places, to people's homes now more than ever.
For Capital Journal, I'm Randy Scott.
Coming up next, we'll head over to the State House for our interview portion of the show. 2 congressional candidates will be joining us this week, Democratic State Representative Wandolyn Gavan and Montgomery Republican Caroleen Dobson. I'll also be speaking with Highlands College President Mark Pettus about their upcoming Impact Leadership Conference. And Steve Duer, Executive Director of Agape of Central Alabama, joins me to discuss National Adoption Awareness Month. Those interviews when we come back.
You can watch past episodes of Capital Journal online at video.aptv.org. Capital Journal episodes are also available on APTV's free mobile app. You can also connect with Capital Journal and link to past episodes on Capital Journal's Facebook page. And you can listen to past episodes of Capital Journal when you're driving or on the go with Capital Journal podcasts. Keep up with what's happening with Capital Journal.
Lowndes County native E.D. Nixon was a longtime leader of the civil rights movement in Alabama. He worked tirelessly to increase the number of registered black voters in Montgomery and was one of the key organizers of several civil rights organizations in the state. In 1945, he was elected as the president of the Montgomery chapter of the NAACP, just 2 years later becoming the state president of the organization. In 1955, Nixon and a group of Montgomery area clergy and civic leaders founded the Montgomery Improvement Association, or MIA. The MIA provided a focal point for activism in Montgomery's black community, and its leaders organized the Montgomery Bus Boycott, in which the city's black citizens refused to ride public transportation for an astounding 381 days. Long overdue recognition was finally bestowed on this early civil rights hero when the Montgomery County Public School System named an elementary school in his honor in 2001.
Joining me next is State Representative Wandolyn Gavan of Birmingham, who's also a candidate for Congress in Alabama's 2nd Congressional District. State Representative, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me again. It's always a pleasure.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to try to have all of the candidates on, or as many as possible. So yeah, you've hopped in the race for Alabama's 2nd Congressional District. So the question I have to ask everybody, why are you running for Congress?
I think the first question should always be, why not me? I feel that I am more than qualified to be in this race. I feel that the people need and deserve a voice. They need vision and they need leadership. Most importantly, I'm the candidate that's going to always ask the question, what about the people? This election is about the people. And for me, as I've started to tour and travel about this state, I'm beginning to hear more and more from the people. And their concern is that we run for these seats, but we forget about the people. So for me, even my theme is Together We Can. And so Together We Can, and it's about the people. Once we marry those two, the question then, it answers itself. Why me? Because I'm the person to do it and to connect the dots. And plus, everybody loves a winner, and I'm a winner.
Well, you know, you're one of a handful of candidates running for this seat that isn't actually from Alabama's 2nd Congressional District. So this question you're going to get this question from voters. There's no requirement that you live in the district that you run in, but you know, there may be an expectation. So what is your answer to that from voters who may question, well, you don't actually live in Montgomery or Mobile or part of the 2nd District?
Well, my answer to them is going to be that upon me winning, and even if I don't win, I represent all the people. I represent the people even in my legislative capacity. You've heard me say it time and time from the podium as we debate in the well. When you're in an elected position, you represent your home base, but you also represent all of those that are Alabamians or citizens throughout. And so for me, it won't be any different than if I'm picking up a new area in my legislative district. I'm going to get out here, I'm going to take off my heels, I'm going to take off these fine jackets, I'm going to put on my boots, my sneakers, or whatever it is that I choose to wear, but I'm going to get out here and continue to work for the people. One thing I would like to say is there's no bigger fighter in Montgomery than me. I'm unapologetic in what I do when I go to that microphone, when I fight for the people, and I'm always fighting for the people. I want people to be treated like I want to be treated. So I try to address and attack issues in a way that I'm seeing and hearing the voices of those whose voices that cannot be heard.
Mm-hmm. Well, as this campaign gets started, it's going to be kind of a compressed timeline with the primary in March. But what issues in particular are you, on the national level that Congress addresses, are you wanting to highlight as your campaign goes forward?
Well, not just only that Congress addresses. Let's go back to what the people need. A large portion of this district, too, encompasses not just the two big cities of Montgomery and Mobile, but you also have those areas that are considered the Black Belt. We have areas that are still in this state that are considered some of the poorest in the country. You have issues with clean water, environmental justice, more aid for our farmers in those particular areas. So I want to make sure that I'm addressing their needs. Hospitals. What can we do to get more hospitals in rural Alabama? You have some counties where there's not a hospital in between at least 2 to 3 counties apart. Many individuals have to either be airlifted to a hospital or a regional hospital, or they end up having to drive at least 45 minutes to get those services. The people in these areas are simple people. They're not asking for a lot, but they're asking for good education. In some areas, there may be only 1 elementary school, maybe 2. You might have 2 high schools. Well, in the bigger cities, of course, there's a high school or middle school on every end. So we want to address those issues. Broadband. I was walking in one of the areas in the district just the other day. You have so many areas, even outside of what we've already done by way of broadband, that still are not able to get reasonable internet services and get them at a reasonable fee. And lastly, the roads. We continue to press this issue about infrastructure. It's still unacceptable these days that we have so many dirt roads that still exist in the state of Alabama. And those are the issues that people are concerned about. And again, these are simple issues. We know the issues: human rights, social justice, human justice, criminal justice, voting rights issues. These are the issues of the day every day. The question is, can I change everything? And am I going to make a promise to change everything? No, I'm not. But what I'm going to make a promise to do is that I will continue to take those issues and try to come up with diplomatic ways to work across the aisle. Everything that I've done here in this legislature, I've passed many pieces of legislation. And for even the battles that I've had, I've been able to work across the aisle to do that. And I think I'll be able to do that in Washington. The people want a voice. They're not expecting you to win every battle, but they do want to know that you at least heard their cries and you did something about it.
Well, speaking of bipartisanship, I kind of wanted to expound on that because this district, it's brand new, it's been newly redrawn, and so of course, we haven't had an election yet, but it's probably going to be moderate, right? It's not going to lean, maybe lean a little bit Democrat, but not really heavily. So, you not only have to win the Democratic nomination by appealing to the base, then you have to run a general election and probably have to appeal to independents, maybe even some Republicans.
Progressives.
Yeah, so how would you go about doing that? Are you the kind of candidate that can appeal to that?
Absolutely. I think I'm definitely that kind of candidate. I think that I do that even here on a daily basis, even in my legislative capacity. As I said, the issues are the same. We continue to try to fix those issues, but I understand that there are going to be independents. I understand that there are going to be some Republicans. I understand there are going to be Democrats. And then I understand that there will be more moderates versus progressive versus more conservatives in all of those regards. The first thing is being able to have an open dialogue, being able to listen to the people. Oftentimes, we don't listen to what the people want. Special interest kicks in. My belief or my value system kicks in. But in understanding people, you have to be able to address their value system, their beliefs, their desires and find a balance. The first thing I think that the problem with elected officials is we go out making promises. When I ran 14 years ago, I ran on a platform that I'm not going to stand here and make you a promise of what I can and cannot or will do. First of all, I didn't know what to expect in Montgomery. And I often would say, it's like open heart surgery. You don't know what you're going to find until you get there. So that's why you get to a point where you don't let the people down, and then they will reelect you again because you didn't make false promises and give them false hopes that you can't keep. What you do is you tell the people that if you elect me, I'm going to work my behind off to do my very best to push your issues and concerns, understanding that I'm not the only vote. Understanding I have to secure votes, but what I will do is I will represent you, and I will not let that level of representation let you down. Mm-hmm. That's what the people want. And I've been going out about talking to people, and that's what they want. They want people to show up, not just on election day. Mm-hmm. They want someone to know that that you are concerned about them. They want someone that will stand up and say, well, it's a tough issue, but this is why I took that vote, and explain it. They may not like it, but guess what? They'll respect you for it. Mm-hmm. And I've done that time and time again for 14 years, 4 terms in the Alabama House of Representatives. I think I've been pretty consistent with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the old over-promising and under-delivering.
And the people are saying they're sick of it to the point there's voter apathy, and they don't have a belief any longer in the system, nor do they have a belief in in the elected officials or those that they vote on.
Let's talk about that, because when I look at Washington, I see a lot of dysfunction, especially in Congress. Mm-hmm. It's just it's flawed as an institution. It's been wounded as an institution. A lot of dysfunction. You had the whole speaker fiasco. You've had
potential shutdown in Congress, issues dealing with Social Security.
It's just a dysfunctional body of government.
Absolutely.
So some people look at that and think, well, goodness, I would never want to be part of that. But you're running. So do you see it as a challenge that I want to be a part of fixing the institution?
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love being a voice for people. I love taking on those tough challenges. I love to fight for those issues, again, to serve as a vessel. And that vessel simply says or exists because it's a conduit to and for the people whose voices cannot be amplified. And I've said that time and time again. But in Washington, you mentioned the speakers, changing of the guards with that, mm-hmm. and ongoing battle. They just abruptly, just a moment ago, abruptly had to dismiss and adjourn for the rest of the week. But the thing is, when the people are watching, and again, it goes back to something I said, they're simple. They don't want all of this big government. They don't want all of this infighting. They don't want it, nor do they need it. And so as the people are watching, they're simply saying, but when are you going to address my issue? Mm-hmm. When are we going to know more about whether there will be cuts or we'll continue to get Social Security, or if we're going to keep Social Security? The people at home, in my district or around here, even my mom, first thing she asked me about when there was some conversation going on, she's like, I hope they're not going to mess with my money. She's retired. She's done her due. So people want to make sure that their money's not going to stop. Federal employees, they should not be worried every 3 to 6 months to a year whether or not government is going to shut down. We have to keep the United States functioning. I know we have all of these issues abroad and foreign issues, but we have a domestic concern to address the needs of the people, our veterans. One of the things I would love to see, and as I'm just thinking about the broader things in government, why should our veterans have to drive miles and miles away to get veteran services? That doesn't make sense to me. There should be a regional office, and more than one in every district throughout this state. In every county, there should be more than one location. They've started doing it in Birmingham and other places. We need to do it here in Montgomery and in the Black Belt. So those are issues. But just to go back to your question, people are sick of that. Mm-hmm. Until again, it breaks the public trust.
Well, look, we're out of time, but good luck on the campaign trail. I guess we'll see you out there.
Hopefully, we will be there. Together we can gavin for the people. And I ask the question once again, what about the people?
Well, thanks again for coming on the show.
Thank you.
We'll be right back.
You can watch past episodes of Capitol Journal online anytime at Alabama Public Television's website, aptv.org. Click on the Online Video tab on the main page. You can also connect with Capitol Journal and link to past episodes on Capitol Journal's Facebook page.
The George C. Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville has been the heart of the U.S. space program since its beginnings in the late 1950s. Marshall Space Flight Center was designated as the agency's propulsion center, developing the rockets that would launch NASA's missions into space. Marshall helped make history in 1961 when its Mercury Redstone rocket powered Alan B. Shepard into suborbital flight, making him the first American in space. Marshall's major task during the 1960s was the development of the Saturn rockets that were used in the Apollo moon missions. They aimed to fulfill President John F. Kennedy's challenge to NASA to execute a moon landing by the end of the decade. Saturn V rockets powered each of the 13 Apollo missions launched between 1967 and 1973, including the first moon landing on July 20, 1969. Marshall also developed the propulsion for the Space Shuttle program and is currently integral to the science and life systems on the International Space Station and the lead center for the Space Launch System development.
Joining me next is Caroleen Dobson, candidate for Congress in Alabama's 2nd Congressional District. Caroleen, thanks for coming on Capitol Journal.
Thank you so much for having me, Todd. I appreciate it.
We're trying to get to all of the candidates, which there's quite a few for this 2nd district because it is a brand new district and no incumbent, things like that. So we'll get to as many as possible. So thank you for making yourself available. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and what led you up to this decision to run for Congress?
Sure, absolutely. I live here in Montgomery with my husband and 2 daughters. This is home for us. I'm an attorney. I work at Maynard Nexon. I grew up in the district. I grew up in rural Monroe County, a small town called Beatrice, about 200 people there. I grew up on a farm. My family raises cattle and has for several generations. My parents are still there, so even though we live in Montgomery, we try to spend as much time as we can in Monroe County now also. I went to Monroe Academy in Monroeville, Alabama. I got into Harvard. I went to Harvard for undergrad. Then I went to Baylor Law School in Texas and practiced there for a few years. I met my husband there. But when it came time to start a family, I knew I wanted to be back in South Alabama. I wanted to raise my kids with Alabama values. And so we're here, we're raising our kids here. But like a lot of families, we're concerned about where our country's headed. We're concerned about the economy, national security, the safety of our families. I'm so proud to be from here, and I want my kids to be proud to be from here too, and I want them to have opportunities here. I want them to be able to succeed here. And I see more and more opportunities vanishing here, and I wanted to do something about it. One of the blessings about growing up in a small town, although I didn't realize it at the time, was really seeing civic involvement on a first-hand basis. You know, towns don't run themselves, and you see that when you live in a town of less than 200 people. So I saw my parents and so many adults work full-time jobs and then also teach Sunday school and volunteer at the fire department. And so
everybody's got to pitch in.
Right, exactly. You don't just show up for things. You've got to make it happen. And so that was really the motivation for my running. I could complain and be frustrated and be concerned, but if I wanted to see change, I needed to take action. And I also have to give a plug for my experience at Alabama Girl State here. Well, actually, it was in Troy and Montgomery many years ago, but for almost, I think, 80 years now, Girl State has been instilling not only civic pride, but also civic responsibility for a lot of young women across the state of all political persuasions. So that certainly was instilled in me at a young age. And that's actually where I first encountered Senator Katie Britt, and what a tremendous role model she was for me then and now, and so many young women across the state. I've been very blessed to have some strong female leadership like her, and like your former boss, Martha Roby, Governor Ivey, and Bedsole, to look up to, women that were willing to step up and make the sacrifice to be a true public servant. And so that's what I want to fight for my family and for Alabama families in this district.
Well, are there any issues in particular that you see on the national level that you really want to dive into if elected?
Where do you start?
Well,
there are quite a few.
Top three, maybe.
No, I think first and foremost, the economy, and that obviously extends also to a lot of other issues, they're all interrelated, but we have got to cut spending. You know, I'm in the grocery store every week, and prices just keep rising up, and I see other folks in the grocery store, you know, we're debating about what to put back because we've also got to stay within our budget. And for too long, Congress has not stayed within their budget. If we have to do that, then they should have to do that too. So we've got to cut spending. We've got to deregulate also. I'm like I said, I grew up on a farm. My family farms. There's so many farmers and landowners and timber owners in this district, and we can't have Washington, D.C. telling us what we can do with our mud puddles. So we've got to cut, if we deregulate also, that cuts down on government spending naturally. And thirdly, we have to become energy independent again. You know, not only is being energy independent going to cut down on the cost of what it takes to make things and ship things, and therefore what it costs to buy things, but when we're not energy independent, we're funding the bad guys, right? We're giving money to Venezuela, who's sending folks up through Mexico across our porous borders. We're giving money to countries in the Middle East who are breeding terrorists as we speak. So energy independence is not just a matter of having more money in our wallets, but also being more secure from a national security standpoint. So the economy is certainly up there for me, again, although there are certainly a lot of other issues we need to work on.
Sure, but I appreciate you detailing that. When you look at Washington, D.C., I mean, you don't have to look for very long to see a lot of dysfunction. I mean, it looks like they've got the train on the tracks as far as this CR goes temporarily, but a lot of dysfunction. You had the speaker fiasco, and it's just not a very healthy institution, it looks like. And so some people look at that and see, oh man, I want to stay as far away from that as possible. Others, I guess, maybe see it as a challenge. Does that describe you? Do you see that dysfunction and say, I want to be part of the solution?
Yes, absolutely. No, I mean, for a lot of folks here in this district and across the country, we have real problems, and there are some real struggles that we're facing right now. And so I think we need real people to fix those problems. We have too many folks that have been in D.C. and living in D.C. and living in the Beltway for all these years and aren't connected. They don't have skin in the game. They're not raising their kids here in the district. And so we don't need any more career politicians. I'm not a career politician. I've never been in politics. Am I qualified? Sure, I've been an attorney for a decade. I know how laws are made, but more importantly, I'm a mother. I am a farmer. I am living in this district, and what happens in D.C. impacts me, and I realize that. I'm not beholden to any special interest groups. I'm not in anyone's pocket. Ultimately, my allegiance is to the people of this district, and that is my goal over the next few months, is to let people know that I am committed to serving them, and that is my sole purpose in D.C., is to make life better and to fight for our Alabama families.
Well, this district has obviously changed quite a bit, right? It was redrawn by the courts to no longer include all that wiregrass, goes all the way to Mobile. And the effect of that is a lot more moderate district, arguably leaning Democratic. So you're a Republican, any Republican that is nominated is going to have to appeal to more than just the base. In the old district, you really just had to get the base out, and that was enough. So any Republican's probably going to have to appeal to those independents, maybe even some Democratic voters. Are you the type of candidate that can do that?
Yes, I am, and I think I'm the best candidate to do that because, again, I'm not a career politician, and I think for so long we've allowed our politicians to politicize so many issues that really aren't partisan. You know, our kids' safety, our national security, even our border. We should all want those to be more secure. We should all want our kids to be safe. And so, I'm not part of some caucus that doesn't allow me to make or try to come up with compromises with others. And I don't get me wrong, I'm a lifelong Republican. I believe that the solution to a lot of our problems is limited government. But at the same time, I've spent my career as a real estate attorney, as a transactional attorney, advocating strongly for my clients, but also trying to get something done, trying to get a deal closed. And there certainly have been times when I've recommended a client walk away from a deal because his interests or her interests weren't going to be protected. adequately, but at the end of the day, I'm trying to accomplish something, and I think that will come across over the next few months, and that's my goal, that I am solely committed to meeting with as many folks as I can to let them know that I'm committed to making this a better district for all of us, for all of our families.
Well, we were out of time, but good luck on that, and we're going to try to get to all the candidates, but we really appreciate you coming on Capitol Journal, and good luck on the campaign trail.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
We'll be right back.
The George C. Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville has been the heart of the U.S. space program since its beginnings in the late 1950s. Marshall Space Flight Center was designated as the agency's propulsion center, developing the rockets that would launch NASA's missions into space. Marshall helped make history in 1961 when its Mercury Redstone rocket powered Alan B. Shepard into suborbital flight, making him the first American in space. Marshall's major task during the 1960s was the development of the Saturn rockets that were used in the Apollo moon missions. They aimed to fulfill President John F. Kennedy's challenge to NASA to execute a moon landing by the end of the decade. Saturn V rockets powered each of the 13 Apollo missions launched between 1967 and 1973, including the first moon landing on July 20th, 1969. Marshall also developed the propulsion for the Space Shuttle program and is currently integral to the science and life systems on the International Space Station and the lead center for the Space Launch System development.
You're watching Alabama Public Television.
Joining me next is Mark Pettus, president of Highlands College in Birmingham. Mark, thanks for coming on Capitol Journal.
I am so honored to be here, Todd. Excited to spend some time together today.
Absolutely. Well, I was hoping before we get started that you could kind of share with our audience about Highlands College, what it is and what its purpose is.
Yeah, so we founded Highlands College in 2011. It's a college that was birthed out of Church of the Highlands in Birmingham, of course, on Highway 280, the Grandview location. Mm-hmm. And it was an honor to really hear Pastor Chris's vision for the college and then begin to form it, put it together. From the very beginning, it's been a ministry leadership university, a university that is built to train and place leaders into vocational ministry. And here we are now 12 years later. We have 7 different bachelor's degrees. We have now hundreds of students who've come through and even thousands who've gone out and then been placed into ministry. So really exciting what's happening there.
Wow. And remind us, where's your campus again?
Yeah, it's in Birmingham on Highway 280, right by Grandview Hospital.
Okay, I see. Well, one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show is you've got this Impact Leadership Conference coming up December 6th. Really interesting lineup of speakers and everything. But before we get to that, tell us about the Impact Leadership Conference, why it exists, and what its purpose is.
Yeah, so the heart of the college is really recognizing that the problems we have in the world are all opportunities for leaders to step in. So the way we solve problems is when a leader steps in and solves that problem. And so really every part of what we're doing as we train our students is around helping them pursue their calling, but then instilling in them a leadership mindset. And so anything to do with leaders, we're automatically excited about that. And so about 7 or 8 years ago, we saw the opportunity to add another layer to the college, which would really be to do our part, we feel like, to come alongside other events and leadership opportunities to add value to leaders in the Birmingham area originally, and now virtually, literally around the country and around the world. And so the heart of the conference is bringing in great speakers and leaders to speak to the audience. And this year, for instance, we're talking about how to lead in turbulent times. So to speak to real opportunities for leaders to grow, and then to help them, achieve what's in their heart.
Mm-hmm. Well, these are turbulent times.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we can agree on that. Well, as I mentioned, you've got some pretty big names lined up for this conference. Can you kind of go through the lineup? Yeah,
this year we're really excited. So every year we've had Dr. John Maxwell. He'll be back again this year. And of course, he's written dozens of best-selling books and just
on leadership.
On leadership.
He's the leadership guy.
He is the leadership guru. So excited to have him back. Our chancellor and senior pastor of Church of the Highlands, Chris Hodges, will be there, and he's always brings incredible content to leaders. And then this year, as guest speakers, we have Dan Cathy from Chick-fil-A, you may have heard of.
Sure.
And then also Doris Kearns Goodwin, who's a Pulitzer Prize-winning author, and really someone who's written books around the presidential leaders and how they've impacted the world.
Oh yeah, Team of Rivals was one of my favorite
Absolutely.
Of hers on Lincoln. That's really interesting. So yeah, a really impressive lineup. So this is going to be virtual, right? So if I attended virtually, what would I get out? Or our audience, what would we get out of attending this conference?
Yeah, so it is a free virtual event. And so in the years past, we've seen over 10,000 people join us now in this event, which is really exciting. And we are hoping and believing that every leader who steps in, no matter what area they're leading in, what context, so not, of course, just Christian leaders, in any sphere of influence, that leaders are going to get the practical nuggets along with the encouragement they need to lead in these turbulent times. So I think leaders, there's a lot going on in the world. I think we all feel that, and so we do hope that leaders are encouraged. But I believe every single one of our speakers is going to add value, and there'll be practical leadership tips that will turn into ways that leaders can step into those areas of leadership and achieve, really achieve what their vision or their calling is.
Mm-hmm. Interesting you said it's free, because I'm thinking about events of this type, when you have big name speakers and everything, a lot of times it's kind of a fundraiser or at least a ticketed event to pay for the speakers or whatever. So free, that's interesting. How can you go about that? I mean, why did you make the decision to make it free rather than, I mean, you could probably get people to pay for something like this.
Yeah, so the event itself isn't free. There's absolutely a cost for that. So we have had over the years now have dozens of community sponsors, different business leaders in Birmingham who invest in this event so that we can then provide it for free to those who are attendees. Mm-hmm. And so I'm really grateful for that group of business leaders who see the vision of it. And I think for us, it's just it's a way we see it almost as a gift. It's a way for us to give back to our community, to give back to leaders everywhere. And so a great group of really visionaries that see the value of it, and then we're able to then provide it to leaders for free, really to take the barrier out. We didn't want cost to be a barrier.
Sure. Do you think that kind of thing, I mean, this kind of event, which is obviously a pretty big deal, really raises the profile of Highlands College and helps you sort of get the message out about your mission, not just in Birmingham, but throughout the state and throughout the nation, as you said?
Yeah, we do hope that, absolutely. I mean, our first goal is to add value, but we are also excited that this conference may be the very first time that someone would even hear about Highlands College. We're very new, only 12 years old, and so a lot of people, even in Birmingham and around the state of Alabama, they've never heard of Highlands College. So we do hope that this event introduces them to the college and then they take a step further and learn more about it.
Sure. All right, well, how do we participate? You mentioned there's an online access. How do we go about signing up?
Yeah, impactleader.com. It's a very easy process to sign up, and of course, because it is virtual, there's plenty of opportunity, but we encourage people, go ahead and get signed up, and then it's an event that'll start in the morning and go through early afternoon, so it's 6 or 7 hours of content, which is really exciting. So a lot of businesses over the last few years have just kind of said, hey, today, that day it's a leadership day, and so they allow their employees and team to gather around the computer and even experience it together.
Well, certainly, especially if it's free. I mean, and hearing from some really renowned voices, not just on leadership, but history and everything like that. So yeah, a great opportunity for a lot of folks in a variety of fields. Yeah,
absolutely. We have had in years past, of course, the business leaders, but people from the education sector, healthcare, really every industry. We've seen this content add value to them, and we're excited. And if you're out there, spread the word. I would say that as well.
Sure.
For anyone who's watching this.
And we'll share the information. And the last thing I'll ask you is how do people learn more about Highlands College?
Yeah, it's highlandscollege.edu, which is an easy just first step on the website to learn more about it. But we always encourage people just to there's a way through the website to do this, just to come visit campus and to see what's happening there. Many people actually are familiar with our location. It's the former headquarters of Health South. So we've renovated that building. So it's actually really exciting for many people to come see it, see what it's become. And we have a lot of vision, not just for now, but into the future. And we love sharing that story with people.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, I'll come see you. We'll talk more up there. Well, thanks again for coming on Capital Journal, and good luck with the event. I will certainly be attending.
Awesome. Well, it was great to be here, Todd. Thank you.
We'll be right back.
You can watch past episodes of Capital Journal online at video.aptv.org. Capital Journal episodes are also available on APTV's free mobile app. You can also connect with Capital Journal and link to past episodes on Capital Journal's Facebook page. And you can listen to past episodes of Capital Journal when you're driving or on the go with Capital Journal podcasts.
November is National Adoption Awareness Month. And joining me to talk about it is Steve Duer, Executive Director of Agape of Central Alabama. Steve, thanks for coming on Capital Journal.
Glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, can you tell us more about Agape and its mission?
So Agape of Central Alabama is a Christian foster care and adoption agency based here in Montgomery, but with offices throughout Central and South Alabama. Our mission as an agency is that as a ministry of Jesus Christ, vulnerable children will find permanency in safe, nurturing families. So we provide foster care services in partnership with the Department of Human Resources. And then we do maternity work with moms who are experiencing a crisis pregnancy. And then we work with families who work alongside of us to provide homes for the children who the moms decide need an adoption plan.
I see. Well, I know that sometimes families seeking to adopt will face a lot of challenges, a lot of barriers. Talk about that. What do y'all see as an agency when families run into barriers trying to adopt?
One of my staff says it really well. Adoption is beautiful, but it's also a bit brutal. So she calls it brutiful. So it doesn't matter which perspective you're coming from, whether from the birth mother perspective, the adoptive family's perspective, or the child perspective. For the birth mother, everybody can identify where the challenges are for her. She's making a really significant choice to not raise a child and to give a child a life that maybe she wants something better for that child. For the family, they usually have already gone through significant losses themselves, maybe infertility, maybe multiple miscarriages, and they're at a very vulnerable place as well. And then the challenge that comes is there's so much information out there, but you don't always know who to trust. One of the biggest challenges, in fact, there's some federal legislation that's pending right now, is to create a list of agencies that are licensed by state so that a family can know, and also enforce what's already enforced, which is enacted anyway. In Alabama, you cannot advertise for adoption unless you're a licensed child placing agency.
Yeah, you would figure that would have been in place already.
Well, it's in place, but since the internet has come into being, it's harder to enforce.
I see.
Yesterday I did a Google search, and of the sponsored ads that came up for giving my baby up for adoption, 4 of them were out-of-state agencies, and 1 was a couple from New York City who was trying to advertise for a birth mom to do a private adoption directly. So you can imagine if you're a family or a birth mom, either one, doing a Google search, finding help that's local, that has expertise with the local system, might be challenging unless those agencies are paying significant ad revenue to be able to get their ads placed high enough.
Right. I can see that leading to some scary outcomes.
Right. And there are bad actors in adoption, and that's one of the reasons this federal legislation is hoping to achieve. It's called the ADOPT Act, and it's been sponsored in the House. And I know we've already had some conversation with a couple of our representatives and senators to try to get some more movement behind this from an Alabama perspective. There are people out there who call themselves facilitators who say that they will help find a mother for you, and they make major promises for the mother and time promises for the family. And what you don't know is that mother may not be being cared for well.
I see.
And they view that child as a commodity, not as a precious soul that needs good outcomes for the birth mother and the child.
Well, you talked about federal legislation. There was legislation here in the state last session, that sought to, they called it streamlining the adoption process and kind of cleaning up Alabama's law. I guess it goes into effect in January, but what have you seen in that law from an agency's perspective?
I think there's a lot of really good pieces that are part of that legislation. I'm really appreciative of cleaning up the language around how long a mom has to change her mind. This is a big decision for a mom. And when she's making that decision, she needs to have clear boundaries as to, okay, here's your time frame that you can change your mind and for what reasons.
Right.
The family also needs that peace of mind.
For certainty, yeah.
For certainty in knowing, okay, what's going to happen? How long do I have to live in kind of this limbo feeling? And the former law was 5 days for any reason the mom could change her mind, and 9 days going to court to change her mind. So you had 14 days total. The new law is 5 business days, which may be longer than 5 days, depending on how weekends and holidays may fall. But it's a much clearer way, and it makes it a much easier way for mom to notify the court that she's changing her mind in that way, make that notification easier.
You know, we had a pretty significant sea change in jurisprudence in the Dobbs decision last year. This is what overturned Roe v. Wade, and in many states, including Alabama, abortion laws have gotten a lot stricter. Ours was actually passed years ago, and so it went into effect, essentially banning all abortions with very few exceptions. And, you know, there's been some anecdotes out there, not really solid statistics, that would lead to an increase in the number of women seeking adoption as an option. But what have you seen from an agency's perspective? Has it increased?
What's increased is the number of women who are pregnant who are in crisis contacting us.
Okay.
The percentage of moms who are making adoption plans hasn't changed that much, but there's more women seeking help.
I see.
So we just finished our fiscal year September 30th. The previous fiscal year we served 36 mothers. This fiscal year we served 65 expectant mothers.
Wow.
And we're starting our new fiscal year with 23 moms who are currently pregnant. So we'll see another increase probably again this year. We're averaging right around 30 expectant moms per quarter being served right now.
Okay.
And we were down in the 10 to 15 range prior to this per quarter.
Now, if I'm reading between the lines there, not all of those end up being adoptions. Does that mean some of them end up choosing to raise the child themselves?
With Agape, our ministry's mission is that vulnerable children will have permanency in safe, nurturing families. If mom wants to parent and has the ability to parent, we're going to support her choice in that and help set that child up for success so that hopefully that child never enters the child welfare system and has permanency. So our numbers have been around 80 to 85% of moms continue to parent, either with family support or on their own that we work with. We've seen that percentage stay about the same in the new era. The issue that we've seen that's really been different is our average age of mom has stayed about the same, which is around 27, 26 and a half range, but the age range has increased.
Okay.
We're seeing younger moms and older moms. We've seen moms as old as in their 41, 42 range that we've worked with recently. At the same time, we've seen more moms coming from domestic violence situations,
Okay.
which creates the need to find safety before we can even talk about what's the best plan for the child. And we partner with other agencies to help us find those safe places and those resources.
I see. Well, when you talk about this, I mean, it just is such an emotional, such a delicate issue. So it must take very trained and really special individuals to work in this. So talk about your team and the professionals that work in this, because I'm just thinking, man, that's got to be a lot to take on emotionally.
Well, clearly, you don't go into child welfare work because you want to get rich at child welfare work. You do it because it's a calling, it's a passion, and our adoption team is extremely strong. Our social workers who work with our expectant moms, they advocate for their moms. And we have a separate unit that works with adoptive families because we don't want anybody to feel like they are pulled by the biases of one of our workers.
Okay.
So when we have a placement at the hospital, there's a worker for the mom and a worker for the adoptive family. And they're both looking after the best interest of each of them at that time. And we view our families as ministry partners. And our adoption supervisor, for example, she's an adult adoptee herself. So she's lived it herself and knows the good, the bad, the hard of adoption, and it can help equip a family in that way.
That's powerful. Well, for any of our viewers who may know someone who could be a candidate for adoption, what would your message be to them?
I think the first thing that you always say, to, either for the mom side or the family side, is know who you're working with. Ask for references from other families who have worked with them to see if things went smoothly. Any reputable agency should be able to give you a clear picture of what the cost is going to be involved. That's oftentimes one of the barriers families run into. There's some amazing resources out there now to help families. We actually provide a service to families that's called My Adoption Finance Coach, which helps families find grants and interest-free loans to help offset some of the costs that come along with adoption.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's powerful stuff. Thank you for what you do, and thanks to your team as well. And thanks for coming on Capital Journal.
Thank you.
We'll be right back.
You can watch past episodes of Capital Journal online anytime at Alabama Public Television's website, aptv.org. Click on the Online Video tab on the main page. You can also connect with Capital Journal and link to past episodes on Capital Journal's Facebook page.
Rosa Parks is one of the most enduring symbols of the American Civil Rights era of the mid-20th century. She was active in the Montgomery chapter of the NAACP, serving as its field secretary. Although she was not the first black woman in Montgomery to be arrested for doing so, her 1955 arrest for violating the segregation ordinance by refusing to give up her bus seat to a white man triggered a 382-day boycott of Montgomery city buses and prompted a challenge of the ordinance's constitutionality in federal court. In December 1956, after the U.S. Supreme Court affirmed a district court ruling against segregation, Parks took a symbolic victory ride near the front of a city bus. Parks continued to work for civil rights causes throughout her life and was awarded the nation's highest honors for her role in the movement.
That's our show for this week. Thanks for watching. I'd like to again thank the legislative leadership, and in particular, Senate President Pro Tem Greg Reed's office, for allowing us to use their press briefing room while our State House studio undergoes a technical upgrade. There will be no Capital Journal next week as we observe Thanksgiving, but we'll be back the following week at the same time, right here on Alabama Public Television. For our Capital Journal team, I'm Todd Stacy. We'll see you next time.